Alright, half cooked, half raw, vegetarian shepherd's pie. Should be good. So first thing is I've got some potatoes boiling. I'm going to take this garlic. Some of it's been cut up a bit, some of it's left whole. I'm putting it into the pot of boiling potatoes to make the mashed potatoes stage 1. So I'm making very garlicky mashed potatoes. You've probably seen this recipe. Some people make this on holidays and stuff. It's a very decadent, rich mashed potato that's got butter, cream cheese, and sour cream in it, and garlic. It's really it's a very strong, really good mashed potato. So we're going to use that. We're going to pull out all the stops for the mashed potatoes for the shepherd's pie. We're going to show people, these meat eaters, that you don't need to eat meat. It's okay if you do, but you don't need to for flavor. All kinds of flavor to be had without it. So, that's stage 1. And stage 2, I'm going to start prepping all the vegetables. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the potatoes are boiled. Now what I've added is butter. And just to save on butter, I've added a little bit of sunflower oil. Just so I don't have to use up tons of butter. And sour cream and cream cheese. And of course it's got those chunks of garlic. Some were cut, some were whole. The reason the ones that were cut were so they'd release immediately into the water. The ones that were left whole is so that now when I mash it, there's still lots of uncooked garlic juices that will now go into the mashed potatoes. So, just a little trick. So now I'm going to mash that up, and then I'm going to probably blend it. We'll see how it goes with the mashing. I'm just mashing these up now, like a standard masher. I'm smashing it pretty good, but I think if I'm going all out in this, I think I'm going to get the hand blender. I've also put some black pepper and some sea salt in here. Now, how much butter, cream cheese, and sour cream and garlic and all the other stuff is really just up to you. It's all about taste. So just play around. Now we're going to get the hand blender. Now I'm just blending this. If you have a little cream, you could definitely add a little cream. I don't have any, but the cream cheese and the sour cream should be fine. If you have a little cream or milk, a teeny bit wouldn't hurt. You don't want to add too much because then it gets too liquidy. Remember, we're making a shepherd's pie, so you want this to be pretty thick. Because we're going to put some, you want it thick and you want it flavorful, because we're going to be putting some of it in with the vegetable mix to hold it together and also hopefully help flavor it that much more. That's why I put so much garlic in. As well as you know, shepherd's pie becomes part of the, well, it's a pie, so it helps kind of hold it together and make it kind of a solid I don't know what I'm trying to say here. So you can cut it into nice slabs and eat it. I just lost the ability to speak there for a minute. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure if you're watching this, you've had shepherd's pie. So normally, traditionally, it's with meat. And the meat, vegetables go on one layer. And the mashed potatoes go on top. You also put a little bit in the bottom. and you put a little bit into the actual mixture, the filling, the meat filling. So in this case it'll be put in with the vegetable filling. A little bit on the bottom and a lot on the top. So this looks pretty good, it's pretty smooth. It's got a nice garlic flavor, not in your face, but definitely sings in the mouth. It's got that nice sour cream cheesy zing to it. I'm going to put some parsley in there just because I have some fresh parsley, and then that's done, and then we're going to continue on with the prepping of the vegetables. I gotta have one more. Okay, so what I've got here is I've diced and basically shredded carrots, and then very thinly sliced, as thin as I could, cabbage. And I've kept these separate from the rest of the vegetables. The rest of the vegetables can just be chopped up and thrown in at the last minute. These, because they're obviously vegetables that people tend to cook because they are a bit tougher. So to compensate for that, so they're not too tough or too overpowering compared to the rest of the vegetables, I've diced them as small as possible. And now I'm going to put a little bit of vinegar. Not a lot, just a little. Mostly to help slightly break them down just a little bit. And also I think flavor-wise it'll add and a little bit of balsamic vinegar. And that's it, just not a lot. Just enough to mix it around, and then let it sit for a while in between how small I cut them and then sitting in the vinegar. It should help break them down so they're a little more consistency-wise the same as the rest of the vegetables, but still raw. And just before I let that sit, I'm not going to put it in the fridge, because also normally when I do half raw, half cooked, I keep it as cold as possible. But again, since these are a different consistency, I'm going to keep them at room temperature, while the rest of the vegetables I'm going to keep in the fridge right to the end. And what I just put in there was, just for fun, I thought I'd put a little bit of pepper flakes. And they're going to sit in there with the vinegar and the carrots and the cabbage. Not a lot, just enough to, some of that spice will go into the, will be released from the vinegar and into everything, and just add a tiny subtle little kick. Probably nothing you'll really notice, but just to add a little subtle warmness to the mixture. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is just making a little onion gravy. So basically I just put some sunflower oil, butter, and a little bit of water, and I put in an onion. I'm just going to let that onion simmer in it, and all the onion juices go into the water, or the liquid. And I put a little bit of a red onion in there too. And I'm putting in black pepper cloves, just whole. So it's an onion pepper gravy. I'm just going to let that simmer. And then when it's, I think it's really oniony, then I'll strain out all the solids and then thicken up the liquid to a gravy. So here's the carrots and cabbage and vinegar with a little bit of pepper flakes. It's been sitting at room temperature for about an hour and a half or so. And I've been turning occasionally so that the vinegar gets through. And then again, it's just mostly to just break it down a little bit, since it won't really be cooked. And a little bit for flavor. And here are the vegetables. You can use any vegetables or herbs you have handy. What I have here is celery, cucumber and zucchini, fresh parsley, thyme and dill, some tomatoes, red onion, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Oh, and some red pepper. So that's what I had handy. Doesn't matter, whatever you want to put in it. Again, if it's something that's tougher, that generally people tend to cook because it's so tough, and you might want to add it in with the vinegar and dice it real small like we did with the carrots and the cabbage. If it's something that tends to not be tough, you know, like things like celery or red pepper that are mostly water, then you don't need to do that. Now at the last minute what I'm doing is I'm just going to maybe let this sit for another half an hour and let the rest of these vegetables kind of mix with the cabbage and carrots and vinegar. But it doesn't really, it's just mostly for flavor. Maybe get a little bit of the vinegar, slightly break down some of the other components. So I think I'm going to let it sit just for about an hour. Maybe less, we'll see. It's not really necessary, I just feel like doing it. So even if you just mixed it in, let it sit for another 20 minutes, that'd be fine. So we'll mix it up, let it sit for a while. And as you can see, the onions are boiling down in the peppered onion gravy. And the potatoes are ready to go at any time. As you saw, I mashed them, put all the ingredients in, and I also put parsley. So there we go, we'll let this sit for a bit, and then the last step really will be adding mashed potato into that, and then layering it in a pan, and then cooking it for a very short period of time, basically just to warm up, just slightly warm up all of the ingredients without cooking them, and then toast the top. Right, so what I'm doing is I've taken some baking dishes and I've smeared the mashed potatoes very thinly. This is very common for shepherd's pie, and so you just want to create a very thin layer, get it around in the corners and along the sides, and again, not too much, just a very thin layer, and it just helps to create a kind of a crispy crust all around it. Kind of helps to kind of hold it all together, so it doesn't get in the corners or spread easily in dishes, so just don't worry about it if it's not perfect. Just do the best you can, keep it thin. Just try to get, cover as much as you can. And now we're going to add that mashed potatoes, some of it, to that, and while also saving enough to put a layer of mashed potatoes on top. Alright, so what I've done is I mixed some potato in with the vegetables, and I just used my hands just to really get it in there and try to make it as clumpy as possible. As usual, I didn't make enough potatoes, even though I thought I did. I tried to make extra, somehow I never seem to make enough, so all I can say about that is when making shepherd's pie, make tons of mashed potatoes, and if you think you've made enough, make some more. Because I always fall short, well not always, but mostly. So you can never have too much. If you have a little extra, I mean, you can always just eat it, right? So I put in as much as I could spare to get this to really hold together and be clumpy, and I mixed it with my hands in the bowl, while of course saving some for the top. I've got 2 dishes going here, and now I'm just kind of pushing it down. I want it really compact and tight as possible, so give it some body, really hold. And now the next step to that is adding the mashed potatoes a layer on top. And before I do that, I'm going to show you, I've strained the gravy, the peppered onion gravy mix, and then once I strained it, I added in some ground pepper. So the cloves are out, but then put some ground black pepper in it. And now I made some water with some cornstarch and a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. Another thing I like to do is you can buy in the supermarket those little packets of Swiss chalet gravy. I usually don't use artificial gravies, but I do keep that around just to augment gravies because it also has a thickener and it has a good flavor. So I put just a little bit of that in the water with cornstarch and some Worcestershire, and now I've added that to this gravy to thicken it up and flavor it further. You just want to simmer this until it starts to bubble and thicken. And let's see if I have a little bit of red wine here. I think I have just a tad. So I'm going to put a little bit of red wine in. Just because. Add a little bit of beer. That would work, but not too much. Still want the onion and the black pepper to be the star of the show. It's a yummy gravy, but compared to like meat gravies, you know, it's much milder, so you don't want to overwhelm it with other flavors. Oh, and I also put just a tad of garlic powder, but not too much because I don't want it to be garlic gravy, I want it to be onion gravy. So let that simmer, thicken up. And now I'm going to put the camera down because it's easier, but I'm going to layer, using that spatula, I'm going to layer the potatoes on top. Okay, so just to show you the technique in case you're not familiar with shepherd's pie, the best thing to do is take big clumps and just drop it in and try to fill up as much space, because once you're spreading, of course, you know, if you don't do it that way, well, regardless, things will start to move and shift, and we don't want too much moving underneath. So the best way to avoid too much moving is to cover the whole thing in the first place, and then if you just kind of push down and then spread, and again, it takes a little bit of patience, don't rush it. You just keep at it and keep pushing down. See, watch. See, it spreads. So it'll spread out to the outer edges, and you can cover those little holes around the edges. So just keep kind of pushing out from the center. If you need to scrape a little from the center, just kind of push and then gently scrape. Take your time, and eventually you'll fill all those holes and cover it up. Okay, so I cooked it for 5 minutes, just basically so that the bottom edge would toast a little bit, and the top obviously warm up the potatoes a little bit, and of course all those cold vegetables in the middle would slightly warm but not cook. And so I did that for 5 minutes, and then I turned on the top grill so the heat stopped coming from the bottom and now it's just coming from the top, and I did that for 5 minutes and slightly toasted the top. Now I'm going to baste it one more time, and then with just the top grill on, probably put it in for another minute or two, just until it toasts. So just baste it one more time. Again, the key is, it's okay if we're warming the inside. In fact, we want the inside warmed. We just don't want the inside cooked. We do have to keep in mind that those really cold vegetables are surrounded by cold potatoes. So this kind of hot and cold, cooked and half raw method again is not for people that are strictly raw. It's for either people that are transitioning and aren't ready to go full raw yet, or for those of us that have no intention of ever, such as myself, that have no intention of going fully raw, but we want the benefits of all those raw nutrients while enjoying the benefits, mostly just flavor and preparation benefits of cooking. So now I've basted the tops, and you can just leave it at that, or some people put cheese on top of shepherd's pie. Some put cheddar, some put Parmesan, some put both. You do whatever you want to do. If you want to put cheese, go ahead. If you don't, then don't. If you want to play around with the cheeses, if you want to really cover it in a big layer of cheese like my dad always did, by all means. I'm just going to put a little bit of Parmesan so that it kind of absorbs some of the butter and will create a really nice toastiness and a teeny bit of a salty flavor on top. I should add, I didn't put any salt in the mixture inside because there was salt in the mashed potatoes and butter went into it, which has salt, and there's going to be gravy, which there was butter in that. So I didn't bother playing around because I didn't want it too salty. So, and I knew I was going to cover it in Parmesan cheese, which is salty. So if you're going to use different things that have lots of salt, then you don't need to put salt in the actual mixture. I put ground pepper, a little bit of ground pepper in it, but that's it. There we go. I'm going to put that in for another 2 to 3 minutes. Watch it carefully, and all I'm really looking for is, with the top grill on, is just to give that final toasty look on the top and then take it out immediately, because I do not want to cook the inside. Just warm the inside. Alright, so it's been in less than a minute. As you can see, it toasted quickly. The Parmesan helped. So I'm going to take it out right away because I don't want to cook it. There you have it. I'm going to let that stand for 5 minutes. And then we'll cut it, put some gravy on it, and have a taste. Sure smells good, I tell you. Okay, so as you can see, I've cut out a slab. It held together beautifully. And the inside is warm, but it's definitely not cooked. So you have a nice warm dish, but lots of raw ingredients inside. And I've poured the gravy over top. And I wanted to show you another thing I did, and that is, when I peeled the potatoes, what a lot of people do is they peel their potatoes for whatever they're using it for, and then they compost the peelings. To me, that's always a waste, because what do most of those people do? They throw out the peelings, then they go out and they buy pre-packaged snack chips or foods, which aren't as healthy. You know, packaging is involved, which isn't good for the environment, etc., etc. More money is spent, when what they had all along was the best ingredients for homemade chips. So what I did was I took all the peelings and I put it in an open pan, covered it in sunflower oil and some salt and pepper. You could put spices if you want. And then I slowly baked it until they were crispy. I like mine really dark and crispy, but they don't have to be this dark. But believe me when I tell you that the flavor better than any potato chip you can buy in the store. Much healthier for you, and you didn't waste ingredients. Well, I say waste, I mean compost. It goes back to the earth, but you know, from an eating point of view, you didn't waste it. So we've got a vegetarian shepherd's pie, And for later you got chips, or if you can serve it with it if you want, a side order of chips. And one thing before we dig into this, I always keep mentioning with this half-cooked, half-raw recipes that it's really just for people transitioning to raw, or people that have no intention of going fully raw. But it occurred to me there's actually uses for people that are totally raw. And that is, one, if you're totally raw, you might once in a blue moon just want to treat yourself and reminisce on what cooked flavors taste like. And so these half-cooked, half-raw is a perfect way for once in a blue moon just to treat yourself and kind of reminisce on the pleasures of cooking. And another thing for people that are totally raw, if you're having guests over that are not raw, it might be an easier way to transition them over. It's a little harder sell. I know there's so many wonderful dishes, but you know, people do tend to have preconceptions and closed minds, and they're used to what they're used to. And so if you were to make one half-cooked, half-raw dish, and then the rest of the dish is all totally raw, the side dishes and the desserts, then you might make them feel a little more at home. It might be a little easier transition. And so yeah, so if you're totally raw, those are two ways you could make use of this. Once in a blue moon to treat yourself, and or if you're having guests that are not totally raw. So anyways, enough of all that. I want to eat. So let's taste this. Put the gravy in there. Got a bit of zucchini. To people that eat meat, I have to tell you, I know when people that don't eat meat anymore tell you these things, it's just kind of, yeah, whatever. But believe me when I tell you, meat is so overrated. Regardless of what they tell you, you don't need that protein. And if you think you need massive amounts of protein, even still, there's a whole world of natural ways to get protein in certain beans and grains and vegetables and other things. There's other ways to get lots of protein. There's no shortage ways to get it if you think you really do need lots of protein. There's a lot of us that actually feel you don't even really need protein. But if you think you do, trust me, there's a million ways to do it. Beans are the most obvious. But there's lots of ways. But beyond that, flavor. People get used to meat and they think, it's like with sandwiches. I loved sandwiches and I used to think you can't have a sandwich without meat. But once I stopped eating meat and making sandwiches, first of all, you get more creative. And then you find out that there's way more flavorful combinations of sandwiches to have once you've eliminated that one thing that kind of limits creativity and limits flavors, and that's meat. And so it's the same thing when you're cooking in dishes like this, or any dishes. You'll find that there's so many more, way more flavorful experiences to have once you stop eating meat. Here, I gotta have another. The inside is just slightly warmed, so it's all raw. So you've got an entire garden of vegetables in there. You got carrots and celery and cabbage and cucumber and zucchini and thyme and fresh dill and fresh parsley and raw red onion in there, and I think that's all I put in. I can't remember. Oh, red pepper. You can hear the crunching. There's a slight crunch, but not enough where it's tough, or everything is just perfect. Easy to chew. Practically melts in your mouth, and the flavors are just wow. Way more flavorful than a meat shepherd's pie. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. I used to love meat shepherd's pie, but flavors in there are just unbelievable. And the inside's all raw, so you're getting all that raw goodness. But in addition, you're getting the yummy onion black pepper gravy. You're getting the garlicky cream cheese mashed potatoes. Wow. It's hard to stop eating, I'll tell you. You just shoveling it in. And of course you got these great chips. And if you've never used the skins before, you get part of the potato, which is what a potato chip is. But the skin is so much more flavorful than just the potato part itself. So these really are so much more flavorful than your store-bought chips. And you can flavor them with anything you want on top of that. I just put salt and pepper, but you can put whatever you want. So there you go. We got half cooked, half raw, vegetarian shepherd's pie. Incredibly flavorful, enjoyable to make. And right now my body's getting tons of those nutrients that are not cooked from all those vegetables and herbs. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll try it out and enjoy.